Good afternoon, everyone. My name is George, and I'd like to welcome you to our Lunch and Learn event on behalf of neoRhino IT Solutions. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today, as our topic will be on VoIP, or Voice over IP. In today's event, we're going to cover these 6 topics about VoIP. We'll start off with what is VoIP and how does it work. We'll go into a few components of VoIP, take a look at some connectivity options of VoIP. We'll go over what could cause problems with your VoIP experience, take a look at a few VoIP environments, and we'll answer the question of can you save money with VoIP. After this, we will have an FAQ as well. So what exactly is VoIP? VoIP stands for Voice over Internet Protocol and is also referred to as Voice over IP. In short, it's a way of using your internet connection for a phone service. It is a combination of hardware and software that enables you to use your internet service for telephone calls instead of the traditional analog copper lines of the PSTN, or the Public Switched Telephone Network. VoIP may seem like it's something totally new to many of you, but you may have been exposed to VoIP without even realizing it. You might be familiar with Wi-Fi calling. That's a perfect example of VoIP because your phone calls connect to your Wi-Fi internet network instead of your cell phone's network. A quick history lesson. VoIP actually got its start in 1995 by a small company in Israel known as VokelTek. They created a product called Internet Phone, an application that offered computer-to-computer voice calls using a microphone and speakers. This ambitious application only worked if both the caller and the receiver had the same software setup. VokelTek went on to become part of familiar company MagicJack in 2010. VoIP is becoming the standard for voice calling as the FCC is looking to disconnect the legacy analog telephony networks in 2018, similar to how analog television services were discontinued in 2009 in lieu of digital television, such as HDTV. Even though the disconnect is in the works, converting to a VoIP system provides equal, if not better, call quality and yields monthly service cost savings compared to analog service, which we will go into greater depth later. To understand how VoIP works, it's helpful to compare it to how a traditional phone call operates. When you make a call using an analog line, it sets up a dedicated connection between 2 parties for the duration of the call. On the other hand, with VoIP calling, the voice information is transmitted over the internet in data packets. The data packets consist of voice samples that are collected together into chunks through a process called packetization for transmission over the internet to its destination. On average, a single data packet contains 10 or more milliseconds of audio. In a data packet switch network such as VoIP, multiple routes can be established and the packets can travel through any of the available routes. If one of the lines supporting the network is down, the packet can switch to another working route to keep the call up. In an analog switch network, if a line goes down, the call can't go through, making call routing less dynamic than with a data packet switch network. A standard VoIP call consists of the caller dialing out and the voice is then collected into samples. Let's use the phrase, "How are you?" Voice samples are then gathered into chunks and divided into packets, dividing the how, are, and you into separate packets. Each packet is then split apart and transferred through the data connection. The voice packets are reassembled once reaching the destination, resembling "How are you?" for the receiver. And the message is received. The process continues in both directions until the call ends. Because VoIP is dependent on your internet bandwidth, how much do you really need for optimum performance? You have to think about how there most likely will be other data and communication needs sharing the internet connection in your office, such as downloads, server connectivity, chat, and so on. VoIP will only get a piece of that shared connection, which during peak times can leave inadequate bandwidth for it. This can cause call quality to deteriorate if you do not have enough bandwidth. An average VoIP call takes about 90 kilobits per second of bandwidth. It's very similar to how you would choose a home internet speed that's strong enough for video streaming services such as Netflix, YouTube, or Hulu. If you choose a speed that is too low, and if there are multiple people in your house streaming at the same time, the connection may start to buffer or even disconnect from the lack of available bandwidth. Choosing the right bandwidth for VoIP is similar. The difference is that upload speed is every bit as important as download speed because it's two-way connection. In the very likely case of using more than one phone at a time, it's even more important. So a low upload speed could result in the loss of data packets during the call and could cause call quality issues. Mind the upload speed. It's a very important factor of how well calls are executed through your VoIP system. A good rule of thumb is to have enough bandwidth for roughly 1/3 of your employees. So in the case of an office that has 30 employees, you should have enough bandwidth to allow 10 users to be on the phone at the same time. While download speed is important for internet service, it's possible to overlook the upload speed because many service providers offer lots of download bandwidth, which is incoming to your network, and relatively little upload bandwidth, which is outgoing from your network. Now, your office environment might not need as much bandwidth as you see here. That's actually the speed that we have at our office. You should factor in your bandwidth requirements based on your internet usage. Now let's take a look over the three main components of VoIP, which would be a PBX, SIP chunks, and DIDs. At the core of a VoIP system is a PBX, or a private branch exchange. A VoIP PBX is a telephone system that switches callers between users internally and externally through SIP chunks and DIDs over an internet connection. We will go over those components in the next few moments. Think of how a PBX works like a telephone operator worked in the olden days of telephony. Remember how there would be a person maintaining a switchboard connecting incoming callers to the right person? Or when you call an office and a receptionist would answer the call, then transfer it to who you would want to speak to. A PBX works in that same way, and may eliminate the need for a physical operator or attendant. VoIP PBXs can either be owned on-premise solutions or through a hosted provider through the cloud. Originally, PBXs used analog technology, but today use digital technology by the way of interconnected VoIP. Interconnected VoIP converts digital signals to analog in order to interconnect with traditional analog numbers. PBX units provide several standard features that you may or may not know about that could be very useful for you and your office's telephony needs. Some of these familiar features include call transfers, voicemail, conferencing, IVRs, or an interactive voice response systems for incoming calls, also known as an auto attendant or a phone tree, call queues, music on hold, the hold music that you get sometimes when you're calling someone and you're put on hold. The soothing music of Kenny G that plays through your speaker while you're waiting for the call to be routed is a result of the PBX at work. More specific to VoIP, if you miss a call and you get a voicemail, you can either get an email with a WAV file of the message to listen to later with the voicemail to email feature. This can be especially useful if you need to keep a record of voicemail conversations for archiving or legal purposes, or if you're like me and you hate going through prompts and pushing pound keys and passcodes just to listen to a message. All you have to do is open up the email with the attachment, play it, and save it if you'd like. If you need to leave for an extended period of time and you want calls to either go directly to your voicemail without ringing, the Do Not Disturb feature takes care of that. In addition, you can have your phone emit a short ring burst to inform you when the call is being sent to voicemail. Follow Me allows you to have control of when and where your calls are forwarded to. It allows you to create a list of numbers where you can be found before the call gets sent to voicemail. For example, you might have your office phone ring twice, but on the third ring, your cell phone will start to ring. If the list you create gets exhausted, the call then gets pushed to voicemail. One other advantage of this is, as a business owner, if you have employees that are more mobile, using Follow Me can make it easier for them to give clients one phone number instead of both their office line and their cell phone number, as it will route the calls to their cell phone for them. Day and night modes are mutually exclusive rules set for during business hours, which would be during the day, and while everyone is out of the office, or at night, or however you see fit. Day and night is a feature available for companies that want to turn on their phone system in the morning and then put it into an autopilot-like state at the end of the day with just a few key presses. The next component would be SIP chunks. SIP chunks, which SIP stands for Session Initiation Protocol, is the technology used for establishing a voice communication session over the internet and makes up the foundation of the call from beginning to end. Think of a SIP trunk like this. Did any of you as kids do the whole tin can and string telephone thing with friends? It was primitive, yes, but that is how SIP trunks work. They are that string that creates the tunnel between the connection over the internet. SIP trunks assist the connection of a PBX to the internet by expanding or consolidating your lines on an as-needed basis. In order to take advantage of SIP trunking, an enterprise must have a PBX, an internet connection, and a DID, which we'll get into next. We would also recommend a SIP-aware firewall in place as well. SIP trunks have the ability to burst, which can temporarily allow for double the call channels than initially provisioned in order to accommodate bursts of high call volume. For example, there's a pizza parlor that has an on-premise VoIP system in place that may only need a few phone calls during normal business hours, but may receive a drastic increase in calls during major events like the Super Bowl. In that situation, the pizza parlor would benefit from having the ability to receive up to double the amount of incoming calls that bursting provides, helping to increase their call completion rate, and their calls are less likely to hang up or get the "all circuits are busy" message. The number of SIP trunks you need is determined by a few factors. First, how many concurrent calls does your business average on a daily basis? You'll need one SIP trunk per concurrent phone call at a cost of approximately $24 a trunk. Second would be your internet connection. SIP trunks consume bandwidth, and you do need to factor upload speed. The last component is a DID. DID stands for direct inward dialing, basically a telephone number that allows you to route calls through your PBX to individual users. DIDs were developed in order to assign certain employees a direct number without requiring multiple physical phone lines. With a DID, a company can route calls to a desired amount of extensions while having to only maintain one DID. The PBX automatically switches a call for a given phone number to the appropriate phone or extension in the company, which makes callers feel like they're calling a person directly rather than a company. DIDs cost approximately $1.50 each. To give you an example, a company may procure 100 DIDs from a VoIP service provider and 8 SIP trunks. This would allow up to 16 concurrent calls at a time with burst ability, even though the company has 100 DIDs. Additional inbound calls would get the message "all circuits are busy" until one of the calls is completed. The three main options of VoIP connectivity that are commonly used today are ATAs, IP phones, and soft phone connections. An ATA, or an analog telephone adapter, is used to connect an analog telephone to a computer or network so that the user can make calls over the internet. An ATA usually has multiple telephone jacks and an Ethernet connection to the network. There are several types of ATAs, and they all create a physical connection between a phone and network device. Some perform analog to digital conversion and connect directly to a PBX. ATAs allow the use of existing analog phones with a VoIP system, which enables the capabilities and potential cost savings of VoIP since you may not have to buy all new phones. ATAs digitize voice data and use protocols such as SIP to communicate directly with a VoIP server. An IP phone is a telephone designed specifically for use in a VoIP system by converting standard telephone audio into a digital format that can be transmitted over the internet. IP phones are the kind of phones that we use at our office and for the Rhynotel VoIP products that we offer. IP phones accept digital incoming phone signals from the internet without the need of an adapter such as an ATA. They allow the user to take advantage of VoIP technology without involving a personal computer or a gateway, although an internet connection is required. Physically, an IP phone set resembles a traditional analog or cordless telephone set. IP phones can have a variety of features at easy access that might otherwise not be available on standard analog phones, such as follow me, call parking, and do not disturb at the push of a button. IP phones can be quickly moved around from one place to another on your network by logging your profile out from one phone and logging into another. One VoIP option that you may not be familiar with is a soft phone. A soft phone is a software program that enables you to make VoIP calls using your computer. It is designed to behave like a traditional telephone, with the program sometimes appearing as an image of a phone with a display panel and buttons to interact with. So if you have a laptop or a mobile device, a soft phone is accessible wherever you have the device with you. Soft phones are a program on your computer, so a headset with a microphone or an internal microphone and speakers are also needed to make calls. Companies often offer their own proprietary soft phones that are configured to work with their service. Other examples of soft phones would be using your cell phone for Wi-Fi calling like I mentioned earlier, or through popular mobile apps such as Line, which allows you to have a phone conversation through the app with people around the world using the same application, just like Internet Phone did back in 1995. VoIP has quite a few advantages on its side of technology, but there are a few factors that could cause potential problems while using a VoIP service that we're going to cover today. One potential problem you may face could be call quality issues. Just like the experience you get when you stream video or browse the web at home, a VoIP system performance is dependent on the bandwidth of your internet connection. VoIP packet loss could occur when a large amount of traffic on the network causes dropped packets. Think of it of how you're on a cell phone and the call is jittery. You might hear an echo of your voice or the audio is cutting in and out. Your gut response may be to ask hello a few times, or maybe speak louder into the mic or look at the bars on your phone screen. You may immediately think it's because of low signal, then proceed to curse your cell phone provider. We've all been there. If that's happening on a VoIP call, it could be because of low bandwidth. If you're routinely having trouble with call quality, here are a few possible solutions. A good practice would be to increase your bandwidth, which greatly varies depending on how many users you have at the office, how many of them need to be on a call simultaneously, and how many are utilizing the bandwidth. Depending on your office size, an outdated router could also create problems for VoIP connections. An updated router to support the bandwidth could be recommended. And you can monitor bandwidth utilizations by users and applications to determine what's taking up the majority of the bandwidth. So say for example, if you're checking each computer to see who's using what and there's somebody who's using an extensive amount of YouTube, that could be what's causing problems. For VoIP, losing power can potentially shut down your phone service. Since it uses your internet connection, if you have a VoIP system and you lose power, your phone system may be inoperable. Disaster planning and redundancy is important in any technology environment, especially when utilizing a VoIP system. Possible solutions for this? Having a UPS battery backup system, or if you can financially justify a generator, can help keep you alive in a power outage. If you're considering this option, be sure to choose a UPS backup with enough power capacity for extended power outages. Another good practice would be to have a single analog phone line, or also known as a POTS line, in place for specifically emergency purposes. This will also make for a good redundant connection if you're that concerned with 911 calling. And another option would be to have a cell phone handy for making an emergency call when necessary. The ability to call 911 has been a bit of a concern for users of VoIP. According to the FCC, there is a possibility that VoIP 911 calls may not connect to the Public Safety Answering Point, or PSAP. The call may not automatically transmit the user's phone number or location information and could be unable to route the emergency call to the proper service to send out in time of need. The possibility of a 911 call going wrong over VoIP is very slim, but here are some tips to prevent a problem if you need to call 911. Make sure to provide your accurate physical address to your VoIP service provider. This ensures that emergency services can quickly be dispatched to your location. You should also be familiar with your VoIP service provider's procedures for updating your address and promptly update the information in the event of an address change. And like I mentioned before, if your power is out or your internet connection is down, be aware that your VoIP service may not work. Consider installing a battery backup or generator, maintaining a traditional phone line, or having a cellular phone as a backup. Especially in this day and age, with more people like us possibly getting rid of their landline service, is it really the right move to cut the copper cord in lieu of VoIP? Here's a quick comparison between the two options. On the side of VoIP, VoIP can be more flexible in the changing in the amount of placement of phones. Features such as call waiting, caller ID, and others come standard with VoIP service. VoIP can lose phone service without redundancy in place in case of a power outage, and 911 emergency calls may not always be traced to your location. VoIP providers need your business address for E911 calling. For traditional analog calls, new or migrated phone lines would have to be physically installed at the point of need. Features such as call waiting, caller ID, and others are usually available for an extra cost. Hardwired analog lines usually remain active during power outages, and 911 call location tracking can be more reliable. Now let's take a look at the two prime examples of a VoIP environment. The first example would be a hosted VoIP environment. A hosted VoIP environment is where the VoIP service provider is responsible for housing the PBX as well as handling the services to the phone system. The provider of the hosted PBX charges a monthly fee that can be inclusive of a minutes package and potentially certain features. Charges can also be a connection cost plus a per minute calling rate. Many hosted VoIP solutions offer features as bundles, but you may not be able to pick and choose the functions you want. Monthly fees for a hosted VoIP service can be determined by the number of phone lines and possible phones that you subscribe to. It can be highly scalable, but the fees can vary based on the features and functionality you choose. This technology allows businesses to have a sophisticated telephone system without the investment in PBX hardware. In fact, the entire PBX is operated and maintained in a data center cloud environment. With hosted VoIP, there's no mandatory maintenance or hardware to purchase or keep up with because the service provider takes care of the PBX. The potential downside of this is that although many modifications can be made to hosted services through web-based administration, overall system improvements and downtime are rolled out at the discretion of the provider. The second example would be an on-premise VoIP solution. Unlike hosted VoIP, an on-premise VoIP PBX physically resides at the client's location, such as a server room or telephone closet, and the routing is done in-house using the local network in a PBX. Calls come to the PBX through SIP chunks and are distributed to the phones. Utilizing IP phones may be the best option for those looking for an on-premise VoIP solution, and the purchase of an on-premise PBX can be used as a tax write-off. We actually set up our own on-premise VoIP product in our office called Rhynotel that we also provide for our clients. Having an on-premise system gives you greater control over your investment. Since the hardware and software all remain on your company's premises, you have total control over updates and security, and you can quickly address outages and issues. Since on-premise VoIP runs on your infrastructure, it can result in a better quality of service, also known as a QoS, which overall performance of telephony or computer network resides. With hosted solutions, traffic runs on the provider's wide area network, which can compromise quality and reliability. A hosted VoIP system can be less expensive at the start since it requires no upfront capital investments in hardware, software, or infrastructure building. However, the cost of the cloud-based solution continues to recur at the same rate, while much of the on-premise cost is absorbed at the initial installation. The smaller initial costs and monthly payments typical of hosted solutions may sound more affordable, but when tracked over time, becomes the more costly VoIP option. But the question on everyone's mind is, can I really save money using a VoIP system as opposed to traditional telephony? Yes, you can. Here are a few case studies that show just how much you could potentially save on costs with a VoIP solution. In this study, we made a comparison between a hosted VoIP solution and using traditional analog lines for a 20-person office and a fax machine. The analog service provider was AT&T in this case, and we used Advantatech for the hosted PBX service. The cost on the hosted VoIP proposal varies depending on if the office wants to lease their phones or purchase them, and for this comparison we'll use the option of the phones being leased. The factor that really shines in this comparison is how much the monthly bills of analog service are comprised of taxes and tariffs. According to our AT&T source, taxes, tariffs, and other various fees make up roughly a 35% charge in relation to how much they're paying for each of the landlines, and roughly 20% for other added features such as long distance. So in this example, at $50 a line, which equals out to nearly $1,000 a month, the taxes in this case equal out to $410 a month. It's a little crazy how much taxes and tariffs make up that much of the cost of maintaining an analog phone system. With VoIP, those various fees, taxes, and tariffs do not apply, just the sales tax. Beyond how much cheaper each hosted VoIP line is monthly compared to an analog line, the money that will be saved on fees can't be denied. With the least hosted PBX option, in 1 year, you're looking to spend a total of a little under $12,000, with a recurring cost of about $966 a month, almost $11,600 a year for service. With the expected 5-year lifespan, they would save nearly $52,000 with this VoIP solution. And after 7 years, the savings racks up to over $70,000. That's huge. Let's look at the same situation with an on-premise VoIP solution. We'll retain AT&T for the analog service, but in the place of the on-premise VoIP, we'll use our own Rhynotel OnPremise PBX. Many of the other monthly fees that hosted VoIP solutions require, such as their PBX, are not applied. In this case, the 20-person office opted to have 10 SIP trunks with burst ability for up to 20 if needed. Now, while they would have to purchase the on-premise PBX and switch during the initial setup, the monthly savings make the investment totally worth it. With the on-premise option, in year 1, you're looking to spend a total of a little over $15,000, with a recurring cost of about $371 a month, about $4,500 a year in service total. After 5 years of service, the savings come up to more than $76,000. And after 7 years of service, this 20-person office would save nearly $110,000 compared to analog service. Wow. The other factor that has to be considered is scalability when dealing with analog service. We all want our businesses to grow, right? If you take a look at how much these fees are at 20 people, imagine how much higher the cost would be if you were to double your workforce or even triple your workforce. The increase for analog lines, as well as the required taxes and tariffs, way outdoes the increase in cost for VoIP, seeing as how the increases in monthly fees would be within the SIP chunks and the DIDs. Now let's switch things up a little bit. This final study is a comparison of how much the cost of setting up and installing that 20-user office with either a hosted or on-premise VoIP system. For a hosted VoIP, once again we'll use the option of the phones being leased. As you can see, even with the phones leased, the upfront costs of the hosted VoIP system are almost eliminated, with the exception of the setup of the DIDs, and the possible exception of any installation costs. In this case, the provider waived the installation fee with a 1-year agreement. But the fees still add up over the years. Take note the additional monthly fees on the hosted VoIP proposal, such as the recording agent fee, the faxing fee, the overhead paging fees, and the leasing fees of the agreement. With on-premise VoIP, you are in control of the equipment and have the ability to change when you want. Premium features aren't always a pricier add-on. As you can see in the on-premise proposal, since they would own the equipment such as the in-house PBX and LAN switch, note on the side of the on-premise VoIP the UPS backup solution as well, the monthly fees they wouldn't have to worry about it because the maintenance of the PBX, the SIP chunks, and the DIDs would be the only thing they would have to concern on. The software support fee is annual and the long distance fees are applicable for both solutions. During the first year, the hosted VoIP is a little bit cheaper, but after that the on-premise solution starts to be the more cost-effective option. Bearing in mind that the expected hardware lifespan of the equipment is around 5 years, the long-term cost benefits of an on-premise solution really start to shine after the initial investment. With the least hosted PBX option, in year 1 you're looking to spend a little under $12,000, with a recurring cost of about $966 a month, almost $11,600 a year for service. With the on-premise option, in year 1 you're looking to spend a total of a little over $15,000, with a recurring cost of about $371 a month, almost $4,500 a year for service. So in a span of 5 years, the savings come up to nearly $25,000. After a 7-year period, the savings rack up to nearly $40,000 for their office. Pretty impressive. For hosted VoIP solutions, There is also the option of purchasing the phones rather than leasing them, as you can see on this chart. The option could save a bit more on the monthly cost, but the on-premise solution still saves you more money. Each of these case studies show just how much money you could save with a VoIP solution depending on your business needs, and we can help set up either option. And although a hosted solution could work well for you, the on-premise options are way more cost-effective in the long run. Now for our FAQ. We've composed a handy list of FAQs that may be considered when thinking of switching to a VoIP system, or maybe to a different type of VoIP system. First of all, what do I need to use VoIP? You need a high-speed internet connection, an IP phone, like the 3 types that you saw earlier, a hosted or an on-premise PBX, SIP trunks, and DIDs. We also recommend a SIP-aware firewall in place. Do I need a computer to use VoIP? No. The only time you will use a computer is if you're going to be using a soft phone. Can I keep my phone number with VoIP? Yes. All VoIP providers will allow you to port your phone number to their service, including toll-free numbers, such as 800 numbers. However, all virtual numbers may not be able to be ported depending on the provider. Is it true that copper lines will be discontinued? Yes. The FCC is already taking the steps to expedite the analog network sunset, which has a target date of 2018. The government is funding the goal of E911 working better with VoIP calling. They also have a national broadband plan in alignment with the analog disconnection to ensure that broadband and mobile capability is available everywhere that the PSTN is today. Should I be concerned with security while using VoIP? For VoIP, you will need a secure network in place, but nothing more than what protection you would usually deploy for your data network. There is a higher level of security need for data applications than for phone conversations. You actually could improve your level of telephony simply by piggybacking your VoIP service on the more secure data network. Can I use my fax machine with VoIP? Yes. VoIP can transmit faxes. However, the protocol is not reliable just yet. If you have a fax machine, we recommend using an analog line or an eFax. Hosted VoIP services can also support faxing, but may charge an extra fee. Can I route incoming calls to a cell phone? Yes. The Follow Me feature of a VoIP PBX allows you to route any incoming calls to a phone number of your choice, including cell phones. You can set it up to go directly to your cell phone at any time, or to redirect it after a caller tries your office phone for a certain amount of time. How can I implement VoIP? You can reach out to your rep here at neoRhino IT Solutions in order to help you devise a turnkey solution from inception to implementation, whether it's hosted or an on-premise Rhynotel PBX system. And that concludes today's Lunch and Learn session. I'd like to thank you all for attending and look forward to future sessions right here with neoRhino IT Solutions. Bye for now.